This week on Another Thing, it is one of the most controversial topics in the country, fracking. We speak with advocates on both sides of the issue. Dawn visits the zoo to find out how they keep all of the animals happy when winter comes to town. And my commentary this week is on the tension between President Obama and the Israeli Prime Minister over Iran. But we begin with Ellen Kolodziej and fracking.
All across the state and here on the streets of Pennsylvania, the topic of fracking has been a hot-button issue. But environmentalists, for the first time in years, have some hope that there will be limits. Governor Tom Wolf, in his first 10 days in office, reversed a Governor Corbett policy that stopped all new gas leasing. And some say that speaks volumes about this administration's stance on fracking.
Now, the reason it's more than symbolic was that Corbett, in the last year's budget, put in $95 million for more leasing of state park and forest lands to balance the budget. So what this reinstatement of the moratorium does is cancel that. So that's many more acres that will not be leased out because of this moratorium. So I'm very happy with that.
Representative Greg Vitale is the head of the state's Environmental Resource and Energy Committee. He says even though the new governor did not do as much on fracking as the far left wanted, it's a good start.
So I believe that fracking has its place as a bridge fuel. But while we are extracting natural gas, we have to do everything we can to develop wind, to develop solar, to develop hydro, to conserve. And you just do the best you can. And I've introduced legislation that would do that.
Now, back in December, the state of New York banned fracking completely. The so-called fractivists celebrated, but many others called it a tragedy and said it's a lost opportunity to boost the economy. Governor Andrew Cuomo says he does not take this issue lightly and that fracking is the most emotional issue he's ever seen.
More emotion charged than marriage equality. More emotion charged than the gun issue, more emotion charged than the death penalty. It's amazing.
So emotions do run high here in Pennsylvania as well, but State Rep Vitale says that lawmakers here will never ban fracking. He does predict, though, that they will pass a severance tax on fracking by the end of June. We shall see. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolodziej.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Now to talk more about fracking, not only in Pennsylvania, but throughout the whole area, we are joined by Jim Walsh, who is the director for the Mid-Atlantic area for the Food and Water Watch, and also Moneen Nasmith, who is an attorney with Earth Justice. Thank you so much both for being here. I want to point out as we get into this that you're both against fracking, and we'll have somebody in the next segment that's going to talk about what they believe the economic benefit is. But I wanted to get that out in front, that our conversation right now is arguments against fracking. Let's start region to region. Since we started in Pennsylvania, and Jim, I'll start with you. We started in Pennsylvania. The governor is talking about putting a ban on any new fracking. Are you happy with that?
Well, what Governor Wolf has proposed doing is a ban on fracking new wells in parks. Which we think is certainly a step in the right direction. We would love to see Governor Wolf come out and to support a ban on fracking throughout the state, but the reality is we're still leaving 700,000 acres of Pennsylvania parkland open to drilling, despite what Governor Wolf is proposing. So it certainly falls short of what's needed, but is a step in the right direction towards protecting the health and well-being of Pennsylvania residents.
It'd be difficult for him now to come out with a full ban on fracking, since he ran on the fact that he was going to increase the taxes on the oil companies who were in the state and bring more money into the state. So that was maybe the key to his campaign.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that when you look at the issue of taxing gas is really a way to further ingrain oil and gas interests in the state, and really is asking residents of Pennsylvania to choose between whether or not to poison communities with fracking and the drinking water and air quality of those communities, or pay for schools. And those are false choices. We need to find a way to generate revenue to pay for necessary social programs, and we shouldn't be sacrificing environmental protection to do it.
Moneen, isn't that the underlying argument for all of fracking? Both sides. One is the economic benefit, and then there's the risk.
That's part of what underlies it. There's also, short of calling for a ban, however, there are regulations that could be imposed in Pennsylvania and elsewhere that would significantly address some of the concerns that people are raising.
Is that what your organization wants? Better regulations, or do you want to ban?
It depends on where we're looking, and I think we have to be realistic to some extent. In Pennsylvania, fracking is happening. Communities are feeling the impacts of fracking right now. It would be terrific if the governor could come out for a ban, but as you pointed out, I think that's relatively unlikely from a political standpoint. And so what he does have at his disposal, and actually what was pending under previous Governor Corbett, were regulations of the industry. And those regulations could stand to be significantly improved and very much tightened to address some of the very broad impacts that communities are facing as a result of fracking.
Let's keep moving around the area. We started with Pennsylvania. One of the boldest moves on fracking so far has been in New York State by Governor Cuomo. He has put a ban on fracking for the time being. Are you happy with that? Yeah,
Governor Cuomo really showed strong leadership in standing up to the oil and gas industry and really looking at the issue, doing the scientific analysis that was necessary to evaluate the impacts of fracking, both in the environment and public health. And it was a very strong grassroots campaign that forced the Cuomo administration to essentially really look at the science behind this. And when that science came forward, it was very clear that we should not be moving forward with more oil and gas drilling. And Governor Cuomo made the right decision based on the science and based on a very strong grassroots movement calling for an end to fracking in the state.
Right, but there is talk that he may lift that ban. I mean, if he feels, like you were talking about a moment ago, that the regulations are in place, that he could continue fracking, and he's feeling a lot of pressure from the state legislature. He's feeling a lot of pressure from the communities. He's feeling a lot of pressure, as you mentioned, from oil and gas interests. Do you see this ban staying in place, and would you be okay if he put in stricter regulations and lifted the ban?
In New York, certainly not. I think, to clarify, we are not advocating that regulations will ever address the full range of impacts that fracking creates, and also the science on a lot of questions really is still being developed. There are new studies coming out all the time that show how horrible the air is becoming around areas that have fracking. So Governor Cuomo did the right thing, both in the face of what we do know and what we don't know.
As far as New Jersey goes, I mean, they haven't had the huge fracking debate that they've had in Pennsylvania and in New York now, because I think people don't believe it affects them as much. But you mentioned the Delaware River. There's also, they're testing to see if it's feasible to drill off of the coast. They're not drilling yet, but even the testing has come under fire.
And I think that you need to understand, even if you don't have fracking happening in your state now or in the future, the impacts of fracking are still going to affect you. And it's not just the offshore drilling. Obama has now opened up the Atlantic seaboard farther south of New Jersey, but still it's a step in the kind of direction where we might see potential.
They're planning on doing the sonic testing right off the coast here.
And you have a proposed liquefied natural gas facility that's being proposed off the coast of New Jersey. You have pipelines going through New Jersey. You have crude by rail that is fracked oil coming from North Dakota coming through New Jersey. New Jersey is not immune to the impacts of fracking by any stretch of the imagination.
And you say they've found some areas where they could frack.
Yeah, the U.S. Geological Survey has identified what could be up to 1.6 trillion cubic feet of gas running throughout central New Jersey. And some legislative bodies, the state legislature in New Jersey actually passed a ban on fracking that would have put that area off limits, and Governor Christie vetoed that. Municipalities and counties are now moving forward with local bans. Middlesex County was the first county in the state to actually enact a ban on fracking in Middlesex County, which is about a third of the South Newark Basin, which is assessed.
Now, you both were our next guest is coming out, and I'm being wrapped quickly, so I need some fast answers, and I hate to do this to you, but the economic impact. He's going to come out and say that gas prices have come down, and there's a great economic impact on not only the areas, but the countries because of fracking, and it's positive. So before I get to him, you can, it's kind of a debate in between segments. What would you say to that?
I would say that, again, the costs of fracking are a lot harder to quantify, but they are real and they are there. The environmental impacts are not just in and of themselves, they cost money. And the impacts to rural communities.
Is that long-term or short-term?
Both.
Jim?
I think what you're going to hear him talk about are the fact that we have these short-term benefits that are happening, but we've seen over and over again, oil and gas, extractive energies, all have a boom and bust cycle. And those benefits aren't shared broadly amongst society. They're shared amongst executives and CEOs of big oil companies and their wealthy shareholders. Communities get left in the dust behind in these sorts of environmental disasters that come from these industries.
All right, Jim, I'm sorry I made you talk so fast because we tried to get it all in, but Jim, thank you. You were great. Moneen, thank you so much. Jim Walsh, who is the Mid-Atlantic Director of the Food and Water Watch, and Moneen Nasmith, who is an attorney with Earth Justice. We'll continue the debate for weeks to come, so we'd love to have you both back. You already know what's coming up. The positive economic effects, I'll say alleged positive economic effects of fracking in the next segment.